this week's drive, we set off on the world's toughest race, find out just how tough, try racing on ice, and see history made in Africa. All this and more in this week's Drive. ...2002 was a bad year for Formula One. Critics said the racing was boring. Michael Schumacher dominated and television figures plummeted as fans switched off. So, last October, the Formula One Commission introduced new rules to reverse the trend.
From the team's point of view, I think they all recognise that certain elements of the sporting contest needed to be perhaps freshened up a bit. At the same time, we didn't want to do so much that we changed the nature of the Grand Prix, and I think the compromise has been quite good.
But despite the measures to spice up the show and give spectators more for their money, Ferrari is still the team to beat. Williams BMW is probably best placed to take them on. They have the most powerful engine in Formula One and two top drivers, Schumacher's younger brother Ralf and Colombian star Juan Pablo Montoya. A new qualifying format and a new points system have been devised, two things that could see a juggling of the field.
It's no good spending 2 days carefully discovering which is the fastest car, putting him at the front and expecting somebody to overtake him, because he's the fastest car. Normally, he's going to drive away. What this will do is increase the chance that the fastest driver won't necessarily be at the front of the grid, because there are so many different things can happen, not least, of course, a mistake by the driver or drop of rain, all sorts of things. So I think it will shuffle up the grid, but not to the degree where you say, well, you've changed the character of Formula One.
Austria marked a watershed, the moment when television viewers decided enough was enough, as Brazilian Rubens Barrichello was ordered to slow down and allow his world champion teammate to win. Schumacher was booed at the finish, stung by hostile questions at a post-race news conference, and later fined for pushing Barrichello up to the top of the podium to collect a trophy he richly deserved but hadn't won. The FIA have now banned the use of team orders to manipulate races.
What obviously brought that about, we all know, was Austria. And if they'd have been a little bit more... The trouble is, they've become a little bit arrogant, Ferrari, and quite rightly so too. They should be arrogant with what they've done. And so they really haven't cared too much about who they upset. And they said, well, this is what the rules, there's no rule to stop us doing it, so that's what we've done. But they could have, obviously, if they needed to have done these things, you know, a little bit more. And maybe that race, Rubens would have won the race on merit. So why not let him win? Everyone knew Mike was going to win the championship anyway. So why do you need to do that?
The ruling body is also having to cope with a possible split of the Formula One fraternity. Ford, Renault, Fiat, Daimler Chrysler and BMW are the 5 car manufacturers threatening to go their own way when the existing contracts of the Concorde Agreement expire in 2007. Eccleston hopes to convince the teams and manufacturers to sign a new Concorde Agreement, the settlement underpinning the way the sport is governed. But it's certain to be very different to the current agreement.
Well, if we act sensibly, it's got enormous growth still. But we really must be... We've got to get this nonsense with these manufacturers and their silly ideas about alternate championships and things like that. And get together, lengthen the Concorde Agreement so there really is long-term stability. And then there's enormous growth.
But the mid and lower order teams are struggling to find the money to compete with the top 3 teams, Ferrari, Williams and McLaren, and drastic cost-cutting measures have happened across the grid. The most recent high-profile sacking was of former world champion Niki Lauda from Jaguar, the biggest name casualty in a wave of job losses among the lower order teams. Jaguar also dumped its 2 underperforming drivers in favour of 2 cheaper new boys. And at BAR, team boss Craig Pollock was replaced by Dave Richards. The all-French Prost team, headed by 4-times world champion Alain Prost, failed before the start of last year, and more recently, Arrows also went to the wall. Arrows, part of the empire of Tom Walkinshaw, was unable to pay either of its drivers or its engine supplier, and lost its place on the grid. But Eccleston says there is greater scope for all teams to make the most of the change in television coverage.
There's room for them, but I think the sponsors, when they sponsor those teams, need to look at it in a different way to maybe the Vodafones and the Marlboro looking at it with Ferrari. They think, we're not going to win, but you know, we can get an awful lot out of it. And now with this new qualifying system, for sure they'll get the same coverage in qualifying as Ferrari, exactly the same. And in the race, the way we're going to set that up, we'll also be going down the field a bit more than hanging on to the leaders, whoever they may be.
Even mighty Toyota haven't been able to topple Ferrari, the only other manufacturer to build their own cars and engines. Toyota's response was to dump both drivers, Mika Salo and Alan McNish, and call in kart champion Cristiano Da Matta. Ferrari was beaten only once last season by McLaren's David Coulthard in Monaco, but McLaren are likely to delay the introduction of their new car until 4 races into the season to give themselves more development time. Mosley says that it is not for the administration to punish Ferrari for its success. It's up to the other teams to improve and take the race to Ferrari.
If you like watching sport, the amount of sport available now with satellite televisions on is enormous. Secondly, there is no doubt that it became fairly obvious quite early in the season in 2002 that Michael Schumacher would win and that the Ferrari was the dominant car. Whereas in previous years, I think of the previous 7 years, 5 of them, the championship gone right down to the last race, and really nobody was able to say who would win. So there is a tendency then on Sunday afternoon to say, well, should we go to the beach or should we watch Formula One? And maybe you say, well, Schumacher's on pole or he's on the front row, they're going to win. Now, you can't fight against that, and the only people who can really put that right are Williams, McLaren, Renault, Jaguar, etc. They've got to do a better job versus Ferrari. We can't ourselves help that.
While the rest of the pack try to salvage a competitive edge, the shuffling of drivers continues. But there's a restlessness along the grid, the motor manufacturers and the fans. Mosley and Eccleston will hope their new proposals work, at least long enough to avoid the much-threatened split in the series. And while all the other teams work feverishly to catch Ferrari, their designers are working just as hard to maintain their advantage. The 25th Dakar Rally offers new challenges for the 342 competitors this year. Despite its name, the event avoids Senegal and the Western Sahara completely and instead heads east to the deserts of Libya and Egypt. The event started from Marseille before heading to Spain and a ferry crossing from Valencia to Tunis. The caravan of cars, bikes and trucks then go across North Africa to the finish in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, covering over 8,500 kilometers, including 5,216 kilometers of special stages. Hiroshi Masuoka of Japan won last year and is back again for Mitsubishi. His teammate Stefan Peterhansel won the motorcycle section 6 times. Another former bike racer now in a car is Jutta Kleinschmidt, the only woman to have won the Dakar. She's driving a Volkswagen turbo diesel buggy this year. Finland's former World Rally champion and 4 times Dakar winner Ari Vatanen returns at the wheel of a Nissan after a 6-year absence. Among the favourites for the race will be former winner Jean-Louis Schlesser of France, along with Peterhansel and 1997 event winner Kenjiro Shinozuka, who won the opening 1-kilometre sprint. Former Formula One and Le Mans 24-hour driver Yoko Katayama of Japan is competing for the 2nd time in a Toyota. Last year, he climbed Mount Everest, but regards the Dakar as his toughest challenge. There are 51 racing trucks entered this year, along with 203 cars and 162 bikes, where KTM are the preferred choice. Italian Fabrizio Mioni will be looking for his 3rd win. On the first day of real racing, from Narbonne in France to Castellón in Spain, Frenchman Richard Sanct set the pace on his KTM, completing the stage in just over 41 minutes. 15 seconds slower was his South African teammate, Alfie Cox, who claimed a fighting second place last year. Spaniard Nani Roma wasn't slowed by the thick mist on the course. Stefan Peterhansel made a perfect transition to the car section, winning the first stage. He has had some practice though, winning the UAE Desert Challenge in November last year in what was really a shakedown event for his brand new Mitsubishi Pajero. Drive recently featured the design and construction of this special racing machine. South African first-time Geniel de Villiers was a commendable second, 17 seconds slower in his Nissan double cab pickup. The cars proved almost 3 minutes faster than the bikes on the opening stage. Masuoka took third place on the opening leg, a further 17 seconds back. Like Peterhansel, the experienced Japanese has one of the new Mitsubishis. However, Shinozuka found grip on the narrow track wasn't constant and lost time overshooting this turn. It was just as bad for Schlesser, his Ford buggy more suited to the desert sands than the mountain tracks. Stage 3, on a beach at Castellon, proved to be the undoing of several bike races. Here, Cyril Reynal comes to grief. Esteve Oro goes more gracefully, but full marks to Pascual Vigneron for repeated attempted saves. Cyril Dupre showed them how to do it, posting a best time of the day on his KTM. Despite only posting the 6th best time of the day, Saint held the lead, showing that slower is often faster. Canny Alfie Cox was making no mistakes, prepared to concede a few seconds lead now, knowing that staying injury-free would pay dividends in the long desert stages to come. Peterhansel conceded 5 seconds on the short spectator stage, losing a piece of his front bumper in a heavy landing. His teammate Masuoka won the stage despite a similar nose-first landing. Landings such as these caused trouble in the Desert Challenge and may prove problematic for the Mitsubishis later in the event. After a 36-hour ferry crossing from Spain to Tunisia, Peterhansel was on form again and consolidated his overall lead by clocking 18 minutes 26 seconds and winning the 25-kilometre stage through pine forests between Tunis and Tozeur. Belgian Grégoire de Mévius in a BMW X5 was second on the stage, 22 seconds behind Peterhansel. Finland's former World Rally champion and 4 times Dakar winner Ari Vatanen came in third at the wheel of his South African-built Nissan pickup. His teammate de Villiers was 5th on the stage, but retained second place overall. This rocky section caused some drivers to lose time as they broke wheels or suspensions. Masuoka came 7th and dropped to 3rd overall in his Mitsubishi, 2 seconds behind de Villiers. Schlesser's buggy was looking more at home on the loose surface. Spain's Nani Roma won the bike stage after a timing error had listed compatriot Isidre Esteve as fastest. Race officials checked the manual backup timing, and Esteve was dropped back to 20th. Brazilian Jean das Devedo finished 16 seconds behind Roma to take 2nd place, while Richard Saint was 18 seconds off the pace in 3rd. Cox lost time on the stage to drop to 4th overall, but still in touch just 70 seconds behind the leader. Saint leads the riders in the overall standings, 22 seconds clear of compatriot Cyril Dupre, who finished in 4th place on the stage. Roma is 3rd overall. Spaniard Marc Coma picks his way through the rocks that caused some cars so much trouble. Drive will update news of the Dakar in next week's episode. We go to the tiny European principality of Andorra for the Andros Trophy. The picturesque Pas de la Casa circuit was the venue for the latest round of France's ice racing series. Held since 1990, the championship is run over 7 rounds, with 2 elite finals each weekend at each venue, one during the day and one under lights. Great care is taken ahead of each race to ensure an even and stable coating of ice. But given the harsh realities of a European winter, uneven surfaces provide thrills and spills for the galleries of shivering fans. At the previous round, Marcel Tarrés lost his lead to rival Philippe Gachet. But Tarrés regained the lead as he drove a perfect race, leading from start to finish. Changes in air temperatures made for exciting viewing as ice either melted or formed over the 820-metre circuit at 2,000 metres of altitude. Tarrés held on for a victory over 4 laps, followed by Gachet and Wilfried Merifina. The second elite final was held under floodlights. However, this time Gachet slid his Toyota Yaris in front of the Citroën Zara of Tarrés at the first corner, and the brave manoeuvre certainly paid dividends. The second final was as closely fought as the first, but with the top 2 places reversed, as Gachet kept a grip on the last corner before taking the checkered flag in a time of 4 minutes and 9.418 seconds. Tarrés was in his mirrors all the way, taking second, while Ivan Lebon claimed third before Gachet celebrated with a trademark victory donut. Tarrés did enough to regain his lead in the standings, but he is now only 11 points ahead of Gachet. The bike final got underway with 16 riders flying into the first corner, and overall standings leader David Buffaliev found himself sandwiched between the Colomban brothers, Loic and Julien. The course became more treacherous under the lights, and Buffaliev's KTM found a rut while cornering as he pursued Loic. He crashed and was passed by Julien. He remounted his bike and managed to regain second place, but he couldn't catch Loic. Loic won the 8-lap race in a time of 6 minutes 39 seconds, with Buffaliev second and Julien third. But in the overall standings, Buffaliev still holds a narrow lead. We go back to Africa now, where Chops Sepuka has made history in South Africa, becoming the first black driver to win a national motorsport title. For the 24-year-old from the township of Kumbu in the Eastern Cape Province, the title began when he met Terry Moss, his manager, mentor and childhood hero. When they first met in 1998, everyone had heard of Terry Moss, a multiple champion in a turbo Audi Quattro. He was one of the names who inspired the young Sepuka. And then one day in the summer of '98, Sepuka's uncle told him that Moss wanted to see Chops drive. Moss recognized a very special talent after watching Sepuka for just a few laps, and the result was a sponsored, factory-supported drive in the national one-make Volkswagen Polo series. Going into the final round, he was leading the overall standings and had to finish third or better to become the first black driver to win a South African national title. As he helped push his Polo back to the pits after a high-speed plug check during testing at the high-altitude Kyalami Grand Prix track, Sepuka and his team looked confident.
Come in there, you turn.
Yeah.
And when you turn this side, it seems to respond even more because it's actually exciting, and the way I regard the sport, I don't look at it as a white-dominated sport. I feel everybody being given the right opportunity and the right backing would be equivalent in the sport, because we have the talent amongst our blacks and whites and colored people and everybody in the country.
Well, you know, it's been 3.5, 4 years of hard work, and Chops and I have been very close. It's much like a father-son relationship. It's emotional for me. I've seen him come through the stages from, not really from rags to riches, but in a similar fashion. It's all happened for him. The game has got big and he's lived up to it. And to win the championship against seasoned South African champions, I think it's fantastic for him.
The final was at Cape Town's Killarney circuit in the shadow of Table Mountain. If anyone knows how to win a title in South Africa, it's Terry Moss, and his tactics suggested caution early on. There was no point in Sepuka making an early charge and trying to lead from the front, as there was a lot of traffic vying for the lead. Soon enough, Chops had fought his way into 7th place, but as the finish line approached, he eased his way through the field and emerged from the last corner in the lead. Sepuka easily held off Graham Nathan and Scott Bricknell to realise a dream he had first had as a young child in Kumbu, that coveted national title. After the race, Chops dedicated his triumph to his manager, mentor and childhood hero, Terry Moss. The inaugural indoor trials donations was held in Tenerife and Spain's Canary Islands. The 5,000-strong crowd gave 6-time world outdoor champion Dougie Lamkin an almost reverential silence as he put his unique skills on display. It wasn't Lamkin's best performance, however. The Briton actually put a foot wrong, an occurrence rarely seen over the last decade. Lamkin's indoor world title was taken this year by Albert Cabestany, and the Spaniard put in a near-faultless performance for his country, scoring maximum points on stages 2, 5 and 8 on the first of his 2 runs. Following the late withdrawal of the Japanese team, Italy took their place but found the competition heavy going. Fabio Lenzi suffered a fall on stage 6. The most spectacular stage was the 10-metre waterfall, and Adam Raga made it look easy as he brought the crowd to their feet. Third in the indoor championship in 2002 and 4th in the outdoor discipline, the Spaniard needed a perfect score to beat the Britons and punch the air in delight as he did just that. Spain emerged victorious by 52 points to 51. And the trio of Raga, Cabestany and Mark Friescher took top spot on the podium in the team competition that pits the top 3 nations in trial motorcycling against each other. The Motorcycle World Champions of 2002 were awarded their titles at the end of December.
Celebrating his 6th world title in the Trial World Championship from Great Britain, Dougie Lamkin.
Champions from all 5 of the International Motorcycle Federation's commissions, road racing, motocross, trial, enduro and track racing, accepted a gold medal from FIM President Francesco Zerbi.
Successful motocross rider ever, Stefan Everts.
Multiple champion Stefan has won more races than any other rider, including his world champion father Harry.
I'd also like to point out at this point that last night Stefan was awarded the Belgian Sports Personality of the Year for the 2nd year in succession. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2002 250cc world champion and the youngest ever world champion in the class, Marco Melandri.
Marco won the title aged just 19 after a torrid season-long battle with Spaniard Fonzi Nieto. For this year, Melandri moves up to the MotoGP class.
And he won the last ever 2-stroke world championship last year. Now he's won the first ever MotoGP championship this year. Valentino Rossi, MotoGP champion.
Just 23, this was Rossi's 4th world title, and the motorsport world is wondering if the charismatic Italian will make a move to another type of racing, perhaps the World Rally Championship. But whether you're steering a Formula 1 car, racing across the desert sands, or just riding up a waterfall, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.